G'day everybody, how you going today? It is so good to see you. I do hope that you are super well. Thanks for joining me for the latest, a wrap around what is going on in the camera industry in roughly the last week or so. Before we jump into the main part of this video, I want to talk about an interview that DP Review had with an executive at Nikon. I think there's lots of little interesting tidbits of information in that interview. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. I've just pulled out a few paragraphs that I think are super interesting. So join me at the end of this video to go through that. And just in case you haven't seen it, please check out my live streamed interview with Jasin Boland. Not only is he a Nikon ambassador and one of the few people in the world to have used a Z9, but he also works on films like Bond, Bourne, Matrix, and so much more. Check this great, informative, behind-the-scenes look video out. Here's the link. Today, we're going to start with Sony, and they've got their own something coming very, very soon. They are sneak previewing at the moment the fact that there will be a massive launch for their new Cine line of cameras on the 15th of November. This is super exciting. Now, there are rumours that this is a Cine camera, which will be an E-mount Cine camera, along with perhaps even another second camera as well. So this is exciting news for E-mount users. Something interesting happening in that space. Watch closely for the 15th of November. Moving on to Canon, and of course it goes without saying that Canon does need to, in some way, I think, respond to the Z9 juggernaut. And by way of that, there are now rumours starting to appear that there will be a Canon R5c. And it is rumoured that the C will have things in it like a fan, and in order to get that fan in there, they've got to push the screen back out a little bit. It will also have a full-size HDMI port. So we can see here if this is true, or even if it's just fantasy, this is the sort of direction that a Canon camera needs to go in to meet the middle of the market and to meet where the Z9 and the A1 actually are. Having usable 8K that can run for more than, say, 10 minutes or wherever it's running right now, perhaps depending on what the ambient temperature is, to what the A1 and the Z9 can do, which is 8K for a long time. I believe 8K 30 is over 2 hours on the Z9. That's crazy stuff. So Canon do need to address that. So these are rumours, but I think, you know, they make a lot of sense. So we look forward to hearing more about the Canon R5c. And in further Canon news, Viltrox have now announced the 85 1.8, which we've had for the Sony E-mount and for the Nikon Z mount for some time. It is now coming to the RF mount. Now, this is a good 1.8 lens. I've used the Z version. It is not as good as the native Z85 1.8, but it is half the price. So it's certainly worth looking at if you want to have a very good 85 1.8 for a very affordable price. So that's exciting for RF users. In Panasonic news, coming soon, we have some more lenses for the L-mount alliance, including Leica, of course. Now, these lenses, again, interestingly, are 1.8 primes. Did Nikon start something here by making the best 1.8 primes the world has seen for 35mm? I think they might have. I mean, really, it makes way more sense to do 1.8 and 1.2 as opposed to 1.8 and 1.4 like it was in the days of EF and F mount lenses of past. So I think this is a really exciting move to see another manufacturer doing it, Panasonic in this case. So the lenses are not all fully announced at this point in time, but we are aware of a 35mm 1.8, an 18 1.8, which will be coming next, and there will be 5 in total. So this is great for the L-mount alliance. In flying camera news, it would be hard to miss the fact that in the last week, DJI have dropped the Mavic 3. Now this is an interesting camera. Not only is there the Mavic 3, but there's the Mavic 3 Cine edition. Both of these cameras, really, they're monsters. We've got a double-decker lens. One is your sort of standard wide lens, and the other above is a more telephoto. the main lens actually has a micro four thirds sensor in it, and that's pretty exciting for a flying camera, I think. Now, the price of these seems to have gone up. I'm not 100% sure what DJI are doing there. To me, it feels a little bit expensive. Yes, indeed, the expensive one in this country is over $7,000, and I think it's like $4,999 in the US. It seems like a lot of money for a drone. I think drones are still devices that are really somewhat specialized here in this country. There are so many restrictions around drones. For example, we cannot fly them in any of our national parks. I mean, you can, but you have to pay and you have to get permission. There's all these things that you have to do. So you can't just turn up to a national park, no one for 100 miles, and fly. We're not allowed to do it. It's against the law. Anyway, look, it's interesting to see the Mavic 3 is here. It does look like a powerhouse in the sky. The fact that it has ProRes RAW built into it and a whole lot of features. It does have a 20 megapixel 4/3 CMOS sensor. That's the camera number one, and camera number two is a 12 megapixel half-inch CMOS sensor. The lens for the main camera is a 24mm equivalent with an 84 degrees field of view, with a variable aperture, which is pretty exciting in a drone, of f2.8 through to 11. I do think that's a big advancement for a drone. That main camera also has a 4x digital zoom. Not sure how good that is, because 20 megapixels doesn't give you much wriggle room before you're digitally zooming and just pixel doubling. And not sure that's going to be that great. The other camera is a 162mm equivalent with an f4 fixed aperture lens, f4.4, and that can have up to a 28x digital zoom. And it has the Hasselblad color system, which is pretty exciting. The drone can shoot 5.1K up to 50p DCI or UHD 4K 120 and 1080p up to 200 frames per second. How cool is that? In either H.264 and H.265 at 200 or 140 megabits per second. It has the capacity to have Apple ProRes 422HQ codec on the Cine model. That's the one that's over $7,000 in this country. 10-bit D-Log and HDR video capture, RAW and JPEG image capture, OcuSync 3.0 image transmission up to 15 kilometers of range. That's crazy. So that's about 10 miles, almost 10 miles of range. I wonder how well that works in the real world with any degree of interference. Omnidirectional obstacle avoidance, APAS or Advanced Pilot Assistant System, and Active Track 5.0. Those things are pretty damn cool. And I think one of the most amazing specs on this one, I have a DJI Phantom 4 and it flies, I suppose, for around 25 to 30 minutes on a battery. This is stating 46 minutes of fly time. That's pretty cool. And it comes in under 1 kilogram, 899 grams for the heavier of the two versions. There's only 4 grams difference in them. So there you go. There's the Mavic 3. DJI continue to give us amazing options in both stabilization and drones. They also do make a few other things. This is an exciting product. Okay, so we have Mr. Murakami. He is an executive fellow and sector manager of the development sector in Nikon's imaging business unit. Now, this is an interview with him conducted by DP Review. I'm just going to grab a few quotes out of this that I think are really interesting and just continue to give us a little bit of insight into where things are going and what Nikon are thinking. Because a lot of people say Nikon are not very clear with their messaging. Well, I think they are clear. It's just it doesn't necessarily get out to a wider audience. So here I am trying to get that out to a wider audience. They're not going to be placing ads in newspapers all around the world to just tell us these things that we can find here. That's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to tell you these things. Firstly, I want to start with their plans around the Z9, and I think there's a great statement here, which is, we plan to add a significant amount of functionality for video creators with firmware updates. This is in regards to the Z9, including 12-bit RAW video and 8K 60. Now, I've read it and heard it from multiple sources, listening to live streams and so on. The Z9 is what it is today But by the sounds of it, there will be not one or two, but sort of maybe kind of not ongoing, as in one every 3 weeks, but there will be continued updates to continue to upgrade the power and the functionality of the Z9. So I do feel like there is a lot more to come in the Z9 space, and based on what they're telling us that this processor is 12 times more powerful, I do feel like there's wriggle room and headroom there. Anyway, we will keep going. Mr. Murakami has also said in relation to there being no shutter in the Z9, quote unquote, there is no difference between the mechanical shutter and the Z9's electronic shutter. Although it depends on the LED frequency, the issue becomes less notable when the shutter speed is lowered. The Z9 has a very fast electronic shutter scan rate, so the user is not more likely to see banding with its electronic shutter. So he's basically saying here, even under LED, which they know is a problem for everybody, the results should be much the same. That's certainly a question I had. Now, when talking about some of the advantages of the Z mount, Mr. Murakami did state in regards to how they're designing the Z mount lenses, that here there's an absolute emphasis that the lens still perform absolutely brilliantly, even wide open. And quote unquote, Nikon designs with an emphasis on resolution, which is something that can be felt in comparison with other manufacturers, and is a place where Nikon has a distinct advantage. In another statement, when talking about video, this is something that I suggested, I don't know, a year and a half or 2 years ago in regards to the fact that we were simply going to have a convergence. We could see it coming, the convergence between high quality video and stills, and here we are. We've pretty much arrived. That is what the Z9 is. It is a high quality video camera, and it is a high quality stills camera, doing it all without a shutter. And so basically the statement here is that Nikon have gone to great pains to make it possible to cut stills from this high quality video. And this is actually something that they are working on to improve how all of that works. So that is super cool. Now, in a question regarding is the image quality of the Z9 better than the Z7 II? Here's the response. The image quality of the Z9 is superior to that of the Z7 II in a few different ways. For still images, the faster scan speed minimizes rolling shutter distortion. Additionally, there is also improved stability in automatic white balance and improved rendering of sunset scenes through higher performance of natural light auto white balance. There is also improved flash control when using all types of speedlights. And there are other benefits of the stacked sensor and X-Speed 7 to dynamic range and noise suppression. So basically what he's saying here, this question is specifically Z9 versus the Z7 II, and the part that I'm most excited about in all of that is that there is improvements to dynamic range and improvements to noise suppression. Cool bananas. And in another question around the support of current cameras, Z7 II, Z6 II and so on, this answer was provided. The features and performance in the existing models such as the Z7 II, Z6 II, Z5 will continue to be evolved and enhanced with continuous firmware updates within the limits of the hardware. So continuous, they're saying it here, continuous firmware updates. And this is a recent article. For example, on October 19th, we released firmware updates for the Z7 II, Z6 II to add functionality based on user feedback. The Z9 is an excellent example of best-in-class video features. Moving forward, we will continue to strengthen the advanced video functions and capabilities of full-frame mirrorless cameras, aiming to increase our market share. So this statement says to me, there's, again, lots more to come for the Z6 II, Z7 II, which obviously we're all waiting for right now. I mean, they basically want to create an ecosystem where you buy the hardware and then they just keep adding to it for quite a while to come. And we have just seen with the recent Z6 and Z7 firmware updates that we are 3, maybe 3+ years right now from their launch and they are still being incrementally improved. Imagine a Z9 still being improved from what it is today 3 years from now. That's an amazing investment, and well, I think that's just significant gains for everybody involved in the system. That's a really powerful quote to me, if I'm interpreting that correctly. So they're the main points I wanted to pull out of that interview. Like I said, lots of little interesting tidbits. I also just wanted to throw in here that there's been a minor ZFC firmware update, which includes the F to Z adapter Mark II, along with the 24-to-120 compatibility. I would like to say that the ZFC, which is a very new camera, as we all know, is already a very snappy camera, and it's possible a lot of what's kind of come to the Z50, the Z6, the Z7 and the Z5 might have already been in the ZFC, because I've noticed it to be quite a performant camera compared to those. So that's why it might not seem like such a big update, because that stuff's already there. So there we have it. There is the latest from around the web. Well, and probably not all of it, because there's always so much going on in the third-party space and lenses and all sorts of different things. But there's some of the interesting things that I've picked out from this last week. I'd love to know your thoughts on any of that. What is the new Sony E-mount Cine camera? What is it? And would you be getting yourself a Canon R5c? Full-size HDMI. I love it. I love that. I love having full-sized HDMI. It's, yeah, it's so exciting. Anyway, great to see you today. If this is your first time here, I'd love to see you again, so please do subscribe. Don't forget to share this video. Don't forget to like it. It super helps us. Also, have you got yourself your calendars? I've almost finished shipping all of the pre-orders. There was just so many. And, well, now I can start shipping orders that happen now. Jump on the website, link below. Merch. What more can I say?